48. Minutes and reports of officers. Minutes. The official record of the proceedings of a deliberative assembly is usually called the minutes, or sometimes, particularly in legislative bodies, the journal. The minutes should be kept in a substantial book or binder. Content of the minutes. In an ordinary society, the minutes should contain mainly a record of what was done in the meeting, not what was said by the members. The minutes must never reflect the secretary's opinion, favorable or otherwise, to anything said or done. To modify the rules governing what is regularly to be included in the minutes requires adoption of a special rule of order, although a majority vote may direct the inclusion of a specific additional information in the minutes of a particular meeting. The first paragraph of the minute should contain the following information, which need not, however, be divided into numbered or separated items directly corresponding to those below. 1. The kind of meeting, regular, special, adjourned regular, or adjourned special. 2. The name of the society or assembly. 3. The date and time of the meeting and place, if it is not always the same. 4. The fact that the regular chairman and secretary were present, or, in their absence, the names of the persons who substituted for them. And 5. Whether the minutes of the previous meeting were read and approved as read or as corrected, and the date of that meeting if it was other than a regular business meeting. Any correction approved by the assembly is made in the text of the minutes being approved. The minutes of the meeting making the correction merely state that the minutes are approved as corrected, without specifying what the correction was. See first paragraph of Form 48.8. The body of the minute should contain a separate paragraph for each subject matter, and should show 6. All motions, 10, or motions to bring a main motion again before the assembly, 625 through 27, chapters 34 through 37, that were made or taken up, except normally any that were withdrawn. Note, there may be certain instances in which a main motion is withdrawn under certain circumstances that require some mention in the minutes. In such case, only as much information should be included in the minutes as is needed to reflect the necessary details clearly. For example, if at one meeting a main motion was made the special order for the next meeting, 4157, or a main motion was postponed after lengthy consideration to a meeting at which it was withdrawn by consent, action at the first meeting should always be recorded, and the withdrawal at the second meeting should be stated for completeness of the minutes. Back to reading. Stating. A. The wording in which each motion was adopted or otherwise disposed of, with the facts as to whether the motion may have been debated or amended before disposition being mentioned only parenthetically, and B. The disposition of the motion, including, if it was temporarily disposed of, 9.7 through 11 and 38.8, any primary and secondary amendments and all adhering secondary motions that were then pending. 7. Secondary motions that were not lost or withdrawn in cases where it is necessary to record them for completeness of clarity. For example, motions to recess or to fix the time to which to adjourn among the privilege motions, or motions to suspend the rules or grant a request to be excused from a duty among the incidental motions, generally only alluding to the adoption of such motions, however, as the matter having been advanced in the agenda on motion of, or a ballot vote having been ordered, the tellers. 8. The complete substance of oral committee reports that are permitted to be given in small assemblies in particular cases is provided in 51, 60 through 62. 9. All notices of motions, 1044 through 51. 10. All points of order and appeals, whether sustained or lost, together with the reasons given by the chair for his or her ruling. And 11. The declaration by the chair in naming an offending member as a part of disciplinary procedures, as well as any disorderly words that led to such naming, and that the chair directed the secretary to take down. See 61, 12 through 14. The last paragraph should state 12, the hour of adjournment. Additional rules and practices relating to the contents of the minutes are the following. 1. The name of the maker of a main motion should be entered in the minutes, but the name of the seconder should not be entered unless ordered by the assembly. 2a. When a count has been ordered, the number of votes on each side is entered, unless the vote was on a motion that would not otherwise be entered in the minutes. B. When the voting is by ballot, the full tally's report, 4537 through 40, is entered. C. When the voting is by roll call, the names of those voting on each side and those answering present, as well as the total number in each category, are entered. If members who are present fail to respond on a roll call vote, enough of their names must be recorded at present to reflect that a quorum was present at the time of the vote. If the chairman voted, no special mention of that fact is made in the minutes. 3. The proceedings of a committee of the whole or a quasi-committee of the whole are not entered in the minutes, but the fact that the assembly went into committee of the whole or into quasi-committee and the committee report is recorded. See 52. 4. When a question is considered informally, the same information is recorded as under the regular rules, since the only informality in the proceedings is in the debate. 5. When a committee report is of great importance or should be recorded to show the legislative history of a measure, the assembly can order it to be entered in the minutes, in which case the secretary copies it in full or attaches a copy of it to the minutes. 6. The name and subject of a guest speaker can be given, but no effort should be made to summarize his remarks. The use by the secretary of a recording device can be of great benefit in preparing the minutes, but a transcription from it should never be used as the minutes themselves. The signature. Minutes should be signed by the secretary and can also be signed if the assembly wishes by the president. The words respectfully submitted, although occasionally used, represent an older practice that is not essential in signing the minutes. Form of the minutes. The principles stated above are illustrated in the following model form for minutes. The regular monthly meeting of the LM Society was held on Thursday, January 4th, 2025 at 8:30 p.m. at the Society's building, the President being in the chair and the Secretary being present. The minutes of the last meeting were read and approved as corrected. The Treasurer reported the receipt of a bill from the Downs Construction Company in the amount of $5,000 for the improvements recently made in the Society's building. The question put by the Chair that the bill be paid was adopted. Mr. Johnson, reporting on behalf of the Membership Committee, moved that John R. Brown be admitted to membership in the Society. The motion was adopted after a debate. The report of the Program Committee was received and placed on file. The special committee that was appointed to investigate and report on suitable parking facilities near the Society's building reported, through its chairman, Mrs. Smith, a resolution which, after debate and amendment, was adopted as follows. Resolved that, its exact words immediately before being acted upon, incorporating all amendments, the resolution relating to the use of the Society's library by non-members, which was postponed from the last meeting, was then taken up. The motion and the pending amendment were laid on the table after the Chair announced that the guest speaker had received a phone message which would require his early departure. The President introduced the guest speaker, Mr. James F. Mitchell, whose subject was blank. At the conclusion of Mr. Mitchell's talk, a resolution relating to use of the Society's library by non-members was taken from the table. After an amendment and further debate, the resolution was adopted as follows. Resolved that, its exact wording immediately before being finally voted on. Mr. Gordon moved that the Society undertake the establishment of a summer camp for boys on its lakefront property. Mrs. Thomas moved to amend this motion by inserting the word underprivileged before boys. On motion of Mr. Dorsey, the motion to establish a camp with the pending amendment was referred to a committee of 3 to be appointed by the Chair with instructions to report at the next meeting. The Chair appointed messengers Flynn, Dorsey, and Fine to the committee. The meeting adjourned at 10:05 p.m. Margaret Duffy, Secretary. Approval of the minutes. In an organization that holds regular meetings at frequent intervals, such as weekly, monthly, or quarterly, the minutes of each regular or special meeting are normally read and approved at the beginning of the next regular meeting, immediately after the call to order and any opening ceremonies. A special meeting does not approve minutes of a previous session unless the meeting was called for that purpose, which is not ordinarily the case. In a session lasting longer than one day, the minutes of meetings held the preceding day are read and approved at the beginning of each day's business after the first. In particular, an adjourned meeting of an ordinary society approves the minutes of the meeting that established the adjourned meeting. Its own minutes are approved at the next adjourned or regular meeting, whichever occurs first. Procedures for the reading, correction, and approval of the minutes at a meeting are shown in 41, 9 through 12. If the Assembly does not wish to carry out the reading and approval of the minutes at the regular time, it may, by majority vote without debate, dispense with the reading of the minutes. The minutes can then be taken up by majority vote without debate at any later time during the meeting while no business is pending, under the same rules as those governing take from the table. 34. If the minutes are not thus taken up before adjournment, they are read and approved at the following meeting before the later minutes are taken up. A motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes is not a request to omit their reading altogether. It can be made at any time while the minutes are actually pending for approval, regardless of whether the minutes have already been read or corrected in some respect. Exceptions to the rule that minutes are approved at the next regular meeting or at the next meeting within the session arise when the next meeting will not be held within a quarterly time interval, when the term of a specified portion of the membership will expire before the start of the next meeting, or when, as at the final meeting of a convention, the Assembly will be dissolved at the close of the present meeting. In any of these cases, minutes that have not been approved previously should be approved before final adjournment, or the Assembly should authorize the Executive Board or a special committee to approve the minutes. The fact that the minutes are not read for approval at the next meeting does not prevent a member from having a relevant excerpt read for information, nor does it prevent the Assembly in such a case from making additional corrections, treating the minutes as having been previously approved. See 4815. Minutes of an executive session may be read and approved only in executive session, as described in 926-27. Common practices when approving minutes at a convention are described in 59-55-9. When the minutes are approved, the word approved with the Secretary's initials or the signature of the chairman of the approving committee and the date should be written before them. If the minutes are approved with corrections, the Secretary should prepare a fully corrected version and distribute copies to the members as well as placing it in the minute book. As noted in 4845, all such corrections should be incorporated in the minutes to which they pertain and not in the minutes of the meeting making the corrections. If the existence of an error or material omission in the minutes becomes reasonably established after their approval, even many years later, the minutes can then be corrected by means of the motion to amend something previously adopted, 35, which requires a 2/3 vote or a majority vote with notice or a vote of the majority of the entire membership, or unanimous consent. In such a case, the content of the original minutes must not be altered, although it may be advisable for the secretary to make a marginal notation indicating the corrected text referring to the minutes of the meeting at which the correction was adopted. The minutes of the latter meeting must include the full text of the motion to amend something previously adopted, which necessarily includes all information required to construct an accurate record of the actions taken at the earlier meeting. Publication of an assembly's proceedings. Sometimes a society wishes to have a full record of its proceedings made available to the public, and when such a record of the proceedings is to be published, in which case it is often called proceedings, transactions, or the like, it frequently contains, in addition to the information described above for inclusion in the minutes, a list of the speakers on each side of every question, with an abstract of the text of each address. In such cases, the secretary should have an assistant. When it is desired, as in some conventions, to publish the proceedings in full, the secretary's assistant should be a stenographic reporter or recording technician. The presiding officer should then take particular care that everyone to whom he assigns the floor is fully identified. Under these conditions, it is usually necessary to require members to use a public address system. Reports of committee should be printed exactly as submitted, the record showing what action was taken by the assembly in regard to them, or they can be printed with all additions in italics and parts struck out and closed in brackets, in which case a note to that effect should precede the report or resolution. Any such record or transcript of the proceedings prepared for publication, however, does not take the place of the minutes, and it is the minutes which comprise the official record of the assembly's proceedings. Reports of officers. In principle, all reports of officers in a society are incident to administrative duties that these officers have by virtue of provisions in the bylaws or other rules. Strictly speaking, in a purely deliberative assembly, the officers make no reports. In an organized society, the bylaws may require each of the principal officers to make a report of the year's work at the annual meeting. 9. At any meeting at which officers' reports are made, they immediately follow the reading and approval of the minutes. Reports of executive officers. In addition to their annual reports, the president and vice president from time to time may wish or need to report on their activities in connection with administrative duties. Such reports are usually for purposes of information only, but may sometimes contain recommendations calling for action by the assembly. In either case, their reports should generally conform to the rules as to form, substance, and disposition that govern committee reports. 51. Motions to adopt or implement any recommendation should be made from the floor by a member other than the reporting officer. Reports by the treasurer. At each meeting of a society, the chair may ask for a treasurer's report, which may consist simply of a verbal statement of the cash balance on hand, or of this balance less outstanding obligations. Such a report requires no action by the assembly. In addition, the treasurer is required to make a full financial report annually, and in some societies more often. Such an annual report should always be audited. It is compiled and dated as of the last day of the fiscal year, if there is one, or December 31st, if no different financial year is stated in the bylaws. Form and content of the financial report. The best form for the financial report depends on particular conditions, such as the kind and size of the society, the nature of its activities, the frequencies of reporting, and so on. The form used should be patterned after reports in similar organizations. In any case, since the financial report is made for the information of the members, it should not contain details of dates and separate payments, which are a hindrance to the report's being understood. The brief model report below is in a form suitable for most small societies whose financial affairs are simple and primarily involve cash. In organizations whose finances are more involved, a double-entry set of books may be advisable or required. Such a system should be set up with the assistance of an accountant, and the report would normally consist of a balance sheet showing the society's assets, liabilities, and fund balance, or members' equity, as well as an income statement similar to the report below without the opening and closing each cash balances. Other statements may be included as needed, such as a statement of changes in members' equity, a statement of sources and application of funds, and a cash forecast. This system may be on a cash or an accrual basis and will usually require review or audit by an accountant. What follows is a box showing an example report of the treasurer. This report would best be viewed visually, but I will read it out for purposes of completeness. Report of the treasurer of the LM Society for the year ending December 31st, 2025. Balance on hand, January 1st, 2025, $1,253.25. Receipts. Members' dues, $630. Proceeds from Spring Barbecue, $296.75. Fines, $12. Total receipts, $938.75. Total, $2,192. Disbursements. Rent of hall, $500. Custodial service fees, $175. Stationery and printing, $122.40. Postage, $84. Total disbursements, $881.40. Balance on hand, December 31st, 2025. Total, $2,192. Richard Larson, Treasurer. Audited and found correct by Colleen Burke, Randolph Schuler, and the Auditing Committee. Action on the financial report. No action of acceptance by the Assembly is required or proper on a financial report of the measure unless it is of sufficient importance as an annual report to be referred to auditors. In the latter case, it is the auditor's report which the Assembly accepts. The Treasurer's financial report should therefore be prepared long enough in advance for the audit to be completed before the report is made at a meeting of the Society. When the amounts involved are very large and the reports complicated, or the organization's contributors or others require it, it is desirable to have the audits made by independent certified accountants. But in ordinary societies and those in which the expense of a professional cannot be justified, it is principal to have the financial reports audited by an auditing committee of 2 or more members of the society, appointed in advance if there is not a standing auditing committee. In some organizations, the financial reports are audited by elected officers known as trustees. Where professional examination is desired but the organization does not require a full audit, a review, as distinct from a mere compilation, by an accountant may supply sufficient testing and verification to satisfy the organization. If the auditor's reports consist only of an endorsement on a financial report to the effect that it has been found correct as shown in the model above, the treasurer can simply read out this certification as he concludes the presentation of his own report. After the treasurer has made his report to the Assembly, and after any detailed report presented by the chairman of the auditing committee if it is needed, the chair states the question on adopting the auditor's report. The adoption of the auditor's report has the effect of relieving the treasurer of responsibility for the period covered by his report, except in case of fraud. If the treasurer presents an unaudited annual report or other financial report that the bylaws require to be audited, and if there is a standing auditing committee, or if auditors have already been chosen in some other manner, the chair, without waiting for a motion when the treasurer has finished reading his report, immediately says, the report is referred to the auditing committee, or to the auditors, or to the trustees for audit. If no auditors have been chosen, the proper procedure is to adopt a motion to refer the report to an auditing committee to be appointed by one of the methods described in Chapter 50. Reports of other officers. Other officers may be prescribed in the bylaws, such as a historian or a librarian, may also have occasion to report to the Assembly. These reports are usually made annually, and like those of the executive officers, are generally for purposes of information only. They can, however, contain recommendations upon which it is hoped the Assembly will act. If the report is to become a permanent official document of the organization, it must be formally adopted by the Assembly. Thus, for example, historical accounts prepared by the historian do not become part of the official history of the Society until the Assembly formally adopts them, with any desired changes after the presentation by the historian.